tend to fish a lot less, sometimes. So the boobies that are going on are the top and the middle, sorry, the top and the point. And it's buoyant, which is, if you don't know anything about booby fishing, you might think, well, why is he fishing a buoyant fly on a fast sinking line? The answer is you get a completely different way of fishing the fly. The sinking line goes down deep, sure, and the buoyancy of the booby means that the flies hang vertically above the fly line this time, rather than with all the other techniques where they're level with the fly line or deeper than the fly line because you're using poly leaders or weighted flies. The booby means they're fishing above the fly line, and they pulse and kick and twitch very tantalizingly in the water. As I say, I'm just going to fish the two at the moment, so I'll take the middle fly off. And don't think that when you're fishing sinking lines, just because I've shown you so far fishing sinking lines with lures, and I'm going to show you a couple of ideas and tips with a booby, that you only use lures and big gaudy flies with a booby, with a sinking line. You'll frequently catch fish, buzzers and nymphs, right down deep on your dye lines and your deep lines. When you're fishing 25 to 30 feet down, do try fishing chironomids and buzzers and nymphs that shallow water. Right, the boobies. You need to fish them on a fast sinking line because they are buoyant. So if you have a slow sinking line, they kind of line curves under, and they don't go down too deep, although eventually they will. I've got two boobies on, a figure of 8 as ever, just letting the thing sink down to the depth you want it. However, the wind has dropped and the sun's gone behind the shade. It's perfect for dry flies. So I'll be on the dries in a moment to show you how to fish dries, and we expect some fish on that. Put my foot in it by telling you that. Boobies, figure of 8 retrieve. Keep in touch with the fly. A couple of acceleration. The all-important stop. The acceleration again. That stop, as I said before, but particularly with boobies, is incredibly productive. It just means that the boobies stop accelerating in towards you and then just suddenly start very free-flowing, drifting up towards the surface. Always fish the hang. And away you come. Nothing that time. Exactly the same principle, and you just keep working the booby at different depths on your drift. You'd use the booby in conditions where you think the fish are deep. Bright lights, bright hot sunshine, very cold perhaps, or generally the fish not feeding, not a lot of food about. Maybe the fish are feeding on daphnia, or tiny water fleas. You don't think they're feeding on nymphs and buzzers. They're certainly not. There's the odd fish rising on the surface now, so dries, as I say, I expect to do something on that. But with this booby, watch your line tip as you're hanging it, as you're fishing still. But again, you can't see a lot because, of course, everything is so deep down here. You're just relying on feel. And you'll get takes. You'll get the takes on both the strip like this, the still stop like that, the acceleration, the slow retrieves. Keep altering. And generally, if I'm convinced I've got the right depth, I would stick with one technique for 20th right depth and just stay with the boobies for exactly that length of time before perhaps changing to mini lures or buzzers or nymphs or something deep like that if I think I've got the depth right. But one thing I know without a shadow of a doubt is today I have not got the depth right with this big deep sinking line. So if that gives you a little idea about booby fishing, just a couple of minutes to give you an idea, let us move on to the dry fly. As before, wind in your line from out there. Right, the decision's made. We're on to the dries. There's a couple of those slicks I was telling you about to the side. But one thing I mentioned, drogue, the Witchwood paradrogue with the 2 ropes, so easy. Just pull one rope and you can really speedily pull the drogue in. Most drogues take a long time because you're pulling in a great weight of water, but not with a paradrogue. Look how quick that is. And in competition fishing, where you've got the speed is of the essence, there's nothing better. We're going to move the boat. Make sure you get all the drogue rope out the way so it doesn't put around the engine. I'm going to move the boat to a couple of those slicks because there are fish moving through those slicks. And the next thing is to show you just how to fish the dry fly. It's exhilarating. We're in position. We've got 2 slicks right in front of the boat, one on the bow, one on the stern. Perfect for fishing the dry fly. I'm going to drift down these slicks, keep the dry flies in the slick. There's not a lot of natural fish moving, but they're there, they're on top, they're looking for flies, so the dries will work. Preparation is everything. It is so important that you get things right if you want to catch fish. And dry fly is actually particularly more important to get right than anything else. And there's 3 things, apart from actually putting a fly on the end, that I would suggest you do before you actually start fishing. I know it's a temptation, the fish are rising all through this slick, and you just want to get your fly out. But you'll be much more successful by taking just a few moments to do these 3 things. First, dip your fly in kind of waterproofing agent. I use Permafloat. A lot of people use Gink. Gink is a very popular one, but there's lots of them on the market. They're all pretty good. As long as your fly floats, that's what you're trying to achieve. So, and the one advantage with Permafloat is you can just dip the whole fly in, and because it's a liquid, you can pull it straight out again, and it's set up, it's done. That means the dry fly is now waterproof and will sit much better on the surface of the water. You then coat the fly line tip in a coat of grease. Lift into the strike. And the fly line tips are notorious for sinking. With braided butts on, they get waterlogged and pulled under. The fly line tip is the thinnest part and notorious for sinking. In a short film of perma grease or some kind of mucilin, some kind of grease, 2 to 3 feet, keeps your line tip sitting high up on the water, makes it a lot easier for you to lift into the fish. And finally, coating the leader in a sinking compound. Now, to some of you that might sound very odd. Why are you making the most difficult way of not catching a fish, but of getting the fish to look at your flies naturally? Because they float and your leader also floats, and the fish see this profile of leader and flies, and you get countless refusals where the fish come up to your dry, turn away, not having taken it. That is usually for a simple reason that your leader's floating. I tend to leader sink. Put a bit on my finger, I wet my finger, and I apply it from the bob fly, which is the top fly, up about 3 to 4 feet, along the arms of all the droppers, and just give a good coating of sinkant onto your leader and the dropper arms. And then everything is prepared. Those 3 things make a major difference in the success of your dry flies. I'll tell you a little bit about dry fly fishing. There's a lot more theory to dry fly fishing than there is to anything else. Some of it obviously works and some doesn't work. But the first thing is you've got to have 3 flies that float. And modern dry flies float in the surface film rather than on the surface film. And I've got examples of modern dry flies here, and you'll see them sitting on the surface film, sorry, just in the surface film, and it's much more of a natural approach than the old traditional dry flies like coachmans and red tags and flies that actually sit on the surface. And I'll show you those. With the dries, you tend not to work them. Tend not to. Not always don't. Tend not to. You don't fish a long line because you've got to be able to see your dry flies sitting on the surface. So you fish a short enough line, you keep your eyes on the dry flies, you keep your rod still, you retrieve because of course you're drifting onto the flies, but the general dry fly fishing you only retrieve slow enough to keep in touch with a slack line, not to actually move the dry fly through the surface film. I always actually keep of slack into my yellow fly line because if you've got the slack, the dry flies are going to drift just that little bit more than if your flies are on a really tight line. And if they're on a really tight line, you're going to set up some kind of weird drift that isn't quite as natural as the real flies would. So keep a little bit of slack, keep your eye on the dry flies, and the big tip with dry fly fishing, do not strike. If a fish comes up and head and tails, don't strike like that and lift very sharply out, because all you do is you pull the fly straight out the fish's mouth. You've got to give it time to take the fly. And so what that means is you just lift. The fish comes up and turns on your fly, you see the rise and you just lift into the fish. No snatch, nothing rapid. With all the other types of fishing, you want to strike as fast as you possibly can. As soon as you feel it, or as soon as your line tip twitches or moves, the quicker you strike, the more successful you're going to be. Now the hard part is, you have to have one eye on your 3 flies, and your other eye roaming around looking for these fish that are coming up the slick. And of course they've stopped now, but they'll be back. And again, the fish are moving upwind. There's one coming upwind towards us now. It's a long way off, but I'm going to put it in front of it. And it's on the edge of the slick. And as I say, they swim up these slicks because these calm areas are notorious for holding and trapping the food. And even if the fish, there's not much natural food around as there isn't now, the fish come up these slicks looking for it. So if you see a fish in the slick, count on it going upwind. Cast your flies across the fish upwind of them and about 6 to 8 feet short. Now the only other point before we go into the actual flies itself, if you're fishing, where you're trying to cover a kind of, oh, here he comes. He should take this one. If you're fishing blind fishing, I've drowned the fly. That was a bit hasty on the cast. When you don't know where the fish are, try and keep your flies 4 to 5, maybe even 6 feet apart, each dry fly. It covers a lot more water than having your flies too close. But when you're actually casting to fish moving up the slicks, when your flies are 4 or 5 feet apart, the fish can easily go between the flies. And therefore, when I just pulled it out of his mouth. See, problem is talking and fishing at the same time doesn't work. That's the concentration. When you're casting 2 fish, like I'm trying to do now with these fish on the slicks, I'm fishing maybe 2.5 to 3 foot maximum apart between the flies. Gives you a much shorter gap for the fish to miss your fly. I've just pulled one out of the fish's mouth, I can't believe it. There you go. And then last thing is false cast and dry your fly off 3 or 4 times before putting it down. If you've got nowhere in mind, no particular fish in mind to cast to, then cast on the edge of the slick, the calm water and the ripple, and try and get your 3 flies to drop 1 in the calm water, 1 on the edge, 1 across the ripple, because the fish love to go up the edges. And that's where my fly is sitting at the moment. There you go. Told you the dry would work. Right in the slick. And what an acrobat this fish is. Look, there he is. Look at him go. Oh, that's a beauty. He just worked his way up that slick. I could see him from about 80 yards away. And up he came and just that slow gulf of dry fly. Now my net's tangled. He's going off to the one side. I've got my line under the boat. Everything's happening here. Here we go. Come on. Let's turn him round. Not a big fish, as you can see from the jump, but it's a trouty and it's on the dry. It's worth under on the booby or anything like that. Middle dropper. There he goes. Oh, oh, oh. Thought he saw something. Saw me or the net. Or the boat. He's coming past the boat and he is underneath the boat. And there he goes. Oh, no, he saw me again. They are strong fish here at Chew Valley. They are so strong fighters. Look at the bend in that rod. That's a fast, powerful rod, that one. And look at the bend it's putting in it. Oh, now you've got to drop your rod underwater when you like this, when a fish goes underneath the boat, and try and pull him back in front. Otherwise, you know what happened? One of your flies will hook the keel. There he comes. Come back. Oh. Particularly when you've got a drogue at the back of the boat. Down he's gone again. He knows a few tricks, this fish. We got him. There he is. How about that on the dry fly? I'll put this one back. Wet your hands. Look at that beauty. Middle dropper. Not such a big fish this time. Up, but he was working his way, as before, up the slicks. He took about 15 feet in front of the boat, so close. I had virtually no fly line out when he took. And it was that slow head and tail. Little dropper again, claret the colour. Here he comes. No, he doesn't. There he comes. No, he doesn't. Third time lucky, they say that. There's another fish moving up the slick, so if I can get... Little dropper again, claret the colour. Here he comes. No, he doesn't. There he comes. No, he doesn't. Third time lucky, say that. There's another fish moving up slick, so if I can get this chap in, we can whack it out and have a look at that big one. Ah, beauty, my love, my darling trout. If you're going to return fish, wet your hands. Unhook as quick as possible. And she's sending the hook out again in the net, that's great. There she is. About £1.75, £2. And then just slip gently back the water to swim away, to live to fight another day. Middle dropper. One of the most important things, although the fish are rising all over the place, it's that little preparation thing again. Every time you stop, because you got a fish, because you get a tangle, or just because your flies are sinking, I always squeeze out moisture. You can use tissues, you can use amadou patches, like a kind of a fungus patch that take out the moisture, and then recoat your fly in floatant, leader and sinker. Just the attention to details. I know it's a minute of your fish time, but it takes a lot longer to catch a fish normally than a minute. And 1 minute of extra preparation can be the difference between one fish and no fish, or 3 fish and no fish, just because you're preparing yourself. It's also started raining, which doesn't matter for the dry fly. It matters for Leo. I'll stick a jacket on a minute. So I'll just finish off preparing. All flies are coated, sponge dry, re-sinked. Well, that sharp rain. Whilst we're waiting for the fish to come up, let me just show you a couple of the dry flies that I've been using here. And a kind of approach you want to use if you're making your own dry flies. These are mod dries. The main, you don't have to names of the flies. The colours are important. You have a variety of colours and sizes. But the main difference is, for example, this one here has its hackles trimmed underneath. So does the green one. They just sit lower in the surface film. The standard dry flies, the original dry flies with the hackles all around, would sit a little too high on the surface of the water for fish to really look at them. And these ones are the trimmed hackles, and ones indeed like this raider without any hackles at all, just sit in the surface film and just appear to be a bit more natural. So, anyway, they're not going to do any good at all sitting in my hand. I'll stick them back in the box and go fishing and see if we can pull out a couple more fish. In these conditions, again, mild, calm, overcast, warm, gentle breeze, fish should be near the surface. So fish floating line. Floating line is great for fishing near the surface, great for general fish because it's easy to cast and easy to detect the take. But sometimes you need to go a little deeper than the standard floating line will let you. And to this extent, you'll find all the top angler and experienced anglers have a complete range of poly leaders. Poly leaders are just lead sink, basically, made by Efflo and Rio, to my knowledge. Maybe other people make them. And on the tip of the line of this, I have clear, you can see the yellow floating line is bright yellow, that's the floating bar, but at the very bottom end of that is a clear, tapered leader. And this is a poly leader. It sinks at about 1.5 inches per second and takes whatever flies you're fishing. In this case, I've got on a mixture of buzzers and nymphs and a fly called a cripplecock, which is just one of the best flies for taking fish that are moving the surface. And this poly leader will sink, as I say, about 1.5 inches a second, and is ideal for when you've got conditions like this, when the fish are occasionally rising and you're half-hearted about putting on dries or you're half-hearted about sticking on wets. You can keep this on, you can fish it quick enough to bring your wets up to the surface. There we go. Or you can just keep on the old poly and fish blind like that. Whoa, look at that chap. There he goes. He's off to Timbuktu. Oh my God, that ran out of backing in a moment. Quite a good drag on this reel. He's got some strength, chap. Now come back. We need to see what your fly are on. Open the cripple pock. I can't find quick enough. Uh oh, he's coming lightning fast back. And he lost me hat. He has gone. What a son. But he's still there. Hey, he's swimming some weed. I've got weed on the end. Look at him go. He knows a few tricks, this one does. I can't keep up with him. I'm going to fall over if I lean back in water. He's on the top. There he comes. Now we're in more control. Ah, back to how fishing should be nice and sedate and careful. Yeah. In control. Not I wasn't in control earlier on, but in control. And look at that, the slime poly, which is a nickname the slime poly is for this intermediate poly, the one that sinks at 1.5 inches per second, has done the business. Come on, my beauty. You must be tired after all those rods. No, he's gone under the boat. I've hooked the net. This is not how to do it. There we go, now we're in control. Ha ha! My booty! That's a bit better. That was a bit better. Right, let's slip him back.
Nice and smooth. Bows on this one, or give me a bit of rabbit. Let's have a jolly good look at it before it goes.
Hooked in the scissors. He's not on the cribcock, he's on the hairs here. Let's just... There, oh look at that nice fat rainbow trout. What a beauty.
Yeah.
What a beauty. Let's slip her back. Gently as she goes. And no problem, more to fight for another day. Wow. Unfortunately, we're running out of time on this. There's so many techniques and tactics to show you. But one of the lines which I really enjoy fishing, it's a great fun way and a great successful fish catching way, is traditional loch style short lining or dibbling. You've got 2 wet flies on, point and little fly, and on the top drop you have a very bushy fly, which we call the bob fly. And the basic idea is you skate top fly through the surface. A couple of pulls, this is too long line, but a couple of pulls, then you skate the top fly over the surface, creating a little wave in the surface film. And the wave draws the fish's attention up. Sometimes they take the bob, sometimes, more often than not, they take the following wet flies. Really, one good rule of thumb with this is the windier it is, the bigger and bushier you want your bob fly. And in calm conditions like this, you only want a subtle hint of wake on the bob fly. I've got a big one on here to try and make it visible for you so you can see the skittering and shaking movement that you're trying to employ on this. But basically, a couple of pulls, lift your tip, and then just skate that fly back over the surface. And when the fish are looking up towards the surface, this will bring the fish up. They'll look at that fly, and you'll often see them follow that lie. And they'll turn away and take the following flies, if they follow the book and if they see the same view as this. You can go to a big bushy muddler if you fish a real rough, heavy wave. And you can fish a very sparse, slim-dressed fly like a BBO in a wave as gentle as this. But as a quick technique, I just wanted to show that. I wanted to give a little idea about this bling. Real short line, doesn't matter how far you can cast, real short line, and give it a go. Ah, that was a great take. I just changed the poly leader depth with this bright sunlight came out and put on a fast sinking poly leader. A lot faster sinking than that slime poly leader fishing earlier on. And first cast, just him sink, it's probably now 3 foot down deep this time. And this beautiful trout has come and taken it, and boy, is this thing giving me a bit of a fight. It's gone around the back of the boat. If I pull the drogue in, get the drogue out of the way, I'm in control, but for how long? Whoa, look at that. Now, I've got propped all over the place here. Let me just manoeuvre myself around. Whoop, and fall in. He's going underneath the boat, which is not a good sign. I can work him round to the front. Ah, look at that, like a dog on a lead. It's like walking a salmon, that one. Now we're in control of the chap. My net's hooked up with the drogue. I ripped the drogue in too quick. Okay, let's have a look at him. He's coming up to the top. This isn't a bad fish. I saw him when he jumped. There he comes up on the top, head and rolling up. 2.5 pounds, which is a lovely, lovely trout. And it's already taken out onto the backing, and he thinks he's going off again for the backing. No, no. Come on, my beauty. Taking the point fly in, the hair's here. The only difference between this fish and other fish is the depth I was fishing the fly with a poly leader. Just change the poly leader, makes all the difference. And I've fished many, many days of fishing where I've changed 3 or 4 times the depth of poly according to the conditions. Ooh, come on, my love. One more turn. Oh, these nets are heavy. There. Beauty. Now that is a fish. Oh, look at that chap. That is a splendid quality condition rainbow trout. See you going back again. That's it, the fly is out. Look at that for a beautiful, what quality, the tail, the fin, that is a quality rainbow trout. Typical chew rainbow. Back she's gonna go. Back she goes. Let her a couple gulps. Into the depth. Well, how about that? I've shown you all the techniques. That's a great way to finish off the techniques. The last fish of the day being a proper chew slab. Excellent. What a fish.
A little more active flies while
Jack, I don't know if you've ever fished the lakes up in BC, but there's some pretty big trout in those lakes. And there are other good lakes in the Northwest. I think of some of the ones in eastern Washington that I've had a chance to fish some of those before. And we actually have some pretty good ones right here pretty close to home in Idaho, as you do in Wyoming. And when I think of fly fishing the lakes with some of these big fish, I think of your good friend Brian Chan.
I first met Brian doing seminars at sport shows in Canada. I was really impressed with how much he knew about lakes. Little did I know that he'd become one of the greatest experts on fishing lakes, especially with chironomid fishing, which is what leads the way in the Pacific Northwest. You'll really enjoy these tips.
Our setting for this lesson on chironomids couldn't be more spectacular. The Douglas Lake Ranch in south central British Columbia is a massive mixture of rolling hills, forests, mountains, and idyllic lakes. It offers a variety of recreational opportunities, but fishing is the one Skip Morris and Brian Chan have come to partake of. Stony Lake is where we'll be fishing, and it's a perfect place to reside if you happen to be a chironomid. Though they're abundant in most rivers and lakes, the muddy bottoms of still waters are where chironomids thrive. They can hatch throughout the year, but it's in spring and fall when explosions of the pupa can wriggle out of the mud and make their way to the surface. This is when you want to be on the water if you're an angler.
They're just starting to feed today, and hatch is starting to slowly build. And as it builds, more and more people in the water column, the big fish will come in and eat.
When you say the water column, you're really talking about the water as it stands between the surface and the bottom.
That's right. That entire, and like we were in 30 feet here, so there's a lot of water for the pupa to be
a lot of column. Yeah. Chironomids are funny little guys. They're semi-stout, little worm-looking things, and they're the pupa, and they come up out of the bottom, and then they kind of squirm their way to the surface laboriously, and the fish tend to take them, they can take them at any place, from the surface right down to when they first pop out of the mud, but they usually take them, don't you find, in the bottom 2-3 feet?
Usually they'll take the pupa within a couple of feet or 3 feet of the bottom of the lake,
right,
and then they'll follow them quite a ways higher into the water column and then take them, 10 feet below the surface of the lake.
Now, in the lakes that I fish near my home in Washington, the fish tend to take chironomids a lot as adults or just under the surface. So you kind of have to keep an open mind about how you fish this hatch.
I've let my type 3 sinking line sink till it's perfectly vertical, straight up, and down, and then I'm doing a real slow but steady figure of 8 or hand twist retrieve. Bring her straight up. There it is.
Oh! Okay, type 4 line. I'm going to my type 4 line now. I'm just going to keep switching gear all day long until I get a fish.
Man, did you see that rod go?
Oh, man!
And I thought I hit a snag. I said, what? There's no snags down there at 30 feet. He just stopped it.
Wow. So you're still fishing the bomber, huh?
Oh, yeah. Well, first fish of the morning, Skip.
Okay, you've convinced me.
I'm just going to do a throat pump on this fish.
Okay.
Figure out what they're eating.
Pumping a fish's stomach is not something you want to do unless you've been taught how. As a fisheries biologist, Brian's technique won't harm this beautiful Kamloops trout.
Good looking Kamloops.
And then I'm just going to put them into the vial, and there you go. He's eating chironomid pupa, and they're all alive.
Chironomid pupa.
Chironomid pupa. And it's just the start of the day, Skip, so hopefully this is a sign of good things to come.
Yes, amen. Well, I was fishing a leech, and I was having a lot of fun fishing it, but no fun catching fish, and I'd rather catch fish, so I'm going to switch to a, what are they, about a size 12?
Yeah, 12.
There's a little black chironomid, about a size 12, chironomid pupa with a little bead in its head. I'm going to get that little bugger right down close to the bottom and retrieve it very slowly.
So what we've done this morning is that we're anchored in about 29 feet of water. And we chose that deep water because there's chironomid pupa coming up. We can see them coming up through the water column. So chances are the fish are eating the pupa fairly close to the bottom. So I've put on a type 3 density compensated sinking line, and we're casting it out about the depth we're anchored in, and then letting it sink till the fly line is straight up and down or vertical, and then doing a really slow hand twist retrieve right up to the surface. And that's imitating the natural rise of the pupa through the water column.
Having the right method at the right time is critical. That's why Skip scurries to match Brian's presentation. There are different ways to accomplish the same task, and this pair have spent countless hours figuring out which one is best at any given time. In fact, Skip and Brian collaborated on a book, Morris and Chan on Fly Fishing Trout Lakes, detailing how to fish a variety of insect forms on most still waters.
We found a bunch of fish moving, and they're probably feeding on chironomid pupa real close to the surface, or they're even taking the adults. So we're just going to sneak in there and cast a few flies in there and see if we can get them to bite. It's
Every so often it happens. Things are just right, and all the fish you ever dreamed of are there. In this case, the wind has pushed the hatching pupa to the end of the lake. There's a cool spring offering ideal water temperature, and a swarm of Kamloops trout are waiting to be discovered by Skip and Brian.
Yeah, what are we doing here, Brian? We were fishing in 25, 30 feet of water a while ago.
yeah, well, we found a shallow water chironomid hatch.
And a bunch of fish.
And a bunch of fish feeding.
Well, that's good enough for me.
Does that work?
Oh yeah, I'm perfectly happy with a bunch of fish. No problemo.
Put an indicator on. Hard to.
Oh, well, good thing I just took mine home. Oh!
They're just plucking at it.
That's not right.
Somebody will eat it.
Maybe they need a furry dragon. Maybe that's what they're begging for. Oh, there you go.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Ooh, that's a good fish. Ooh.
It's a bit of a challenge landing them in here.
Oh! Cripes.
Gotta kind of put the brakes on. Oh.
Gee.
Get out of there.
Oh, my turn. Oh, this is going to be a trick. Net. Net. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I netted him. That's right. Oh, yeah.
In such a situation where food and frantic fish activity collide, we could slide our underwater camera into position and get some great shots. The first thing to look at is the pattern we're fishing, a chironomid pupa. It doesn't look like much underwater, but apparently looks enough like the real thing to interest the trout. If you watch carefully, we have an actual take on the fly underwater. A number of fish pass it by with little interest, but out of nowhere, one spies the chironomid and takes it with abandon.
There he is.
There you go.
There's a nice one. Nice doe.
Gee,
That's a nice fish.
that is.
Beautiful. A beautiful. Whoa. No, I'll just let it go. There's a beautiful. That's like close to 20 inches.
Oh boy! No, no. No.
Big buck, Skip.
Oh.
Yeah. Horse him.
I'm doing all I can on a 4-weight. So far he's playing along pretty well. Early netting. Oh,
Head first.
I'm trying. There. Thank you, Brian.
All of our attempts to get Skip and Brian focused back on instruction were destroyed by the incredible fish action that we encountered. There's a lesson here, but it escaped all of us at this point.
Uh-huh. Oh, is this a spring?
Yeah, and there's that. And these fish are kind of concentrated in here, and they're feeding
Kinda.
on chironomids.
Well, this is a nice sized fish.
Our summary for chironomid angling was lost somewhere in the heat of battle. It may still dwell somewhere in this bay of Stony Lake on the Douglas Lake Ranch, but we can't find it. For all the details on how Morris and Chan fish lakes, you might want to look for their book at your favorite fly shop.
Last year we had the pleasure of doing seminars with Denny Rickards, a fellow Oregonian, and man does he know about lakes. He's written some fabulous books and videos on lake fishing, and I know, Mike, you really love lake fishing.
Well, I do enjoy it, and when I'm at the sports show, not doing programs of my own, he's one of the guys I like to go and watch his seminars. And I think he knows about as much about lake fishing as he's probably forgotten more than I'll ever learn.
Yep.
And with most fishing, it all starts at home, preparation, planning. And I think he's got some great tips on kind of what we need to know when we're getting ready to go and what we need to take with us.
Denny has some great ideas on some of the rules, some of the things to remember when you go out to fish lakes. So take it away, Denny.
You know, one of the reasons I fish lakes because it offers us an opportunity to catch a lot of big fish, probably a lot more than what you're going to do on a stream and a river. And the other thing that I really like about fishing lakes is it gives you a lot of solitude, but you know, we struggle a lot of times because lakes seem to be intimidating for a lot of us, but folks, it doesn't have to be. Fishing lakes is really a matter of three things. Presentation, which really includes your ability to cast, get the fly to the fish, the fly line that you choose to fish with, which controls the depths and the angles, and the retrieve. So if you can concentrate on those points along with the patterns that you use, make sure that they're suggestive, they imitate more than one food source, and look at the conditions that you face when you're out on the water, because those conditions will change and vary. So these are the reasons that I'm successful on lakes. You know, folks, one of the things that I find that's really critical, and I try to share this with all the clients when I'm guiding, is that when you get out to the lake, before you even get started, there's 5 key things that you have to look at, because these 5 keys are going to give these trout direction as to where they're going to be, what depth they'll be at, what they're going to feed, how fast they'll digest their food, when they spawn. And here's the 5 that I look at. First thing I'm going to look at is the sky. Is it sunny or cloudy? Because that'll make a lot of difference on what fly we're going to use, what depth we're going to fish. Second point that's critical to me is the water. Is it flat like you see here right now, or is it rippled? Third thing, is the water warm or is it cold? Because if the water's cold, that means we're going to have to slow down our retrieves. If it's warmer, we can do a lot of other things that are different. We can speed up our retrieve. Fourth thing, I look at the water and determine whether it's clear or it's cloudy, because if it's cloudy, we can do some things that we can't do when the water's clear. That's a tougher presentation thing. And the fifth thing, one that you have to know, you got to know the depth of the water you're fishing, folks. If you don't have some way of measuring it with a depth finder or something, then you can probe and count down on your line until you start hitting that bottom. But these are the key things, and all these things will direct and tell these fish where they're going to be, what they're going to eat, how soon they're going to digest, is points I just made a minute ago. And from those points, all that tells us, it'll tell us what line to use, what retrieve to use, what flies, what speed to pull them. And it's really kind of a key to what you need to do in order to be successful. Lines for fishing lakes, one that I use 70% of the time is Cortland's Camo line. That's an intermediate line, and the reason it's so important, they're the only company so far who have been able to design a line that will sink from maybe 1 inch to 1.25 inches per second. You need a line that's going to sink slowly and hold you in the zone, and that's what that Camo line does. The other line that I use a lot is the Cortland 444 SL, and that's a line that's twice as fast, almost 2 inches per second. And you need to fish that line in depths of 6 to 12 feet. And you can go with faster sinking stuff, but the key is to get it in the zone and keep it there. And those faster sinking lines sometimes will travel down below it too quick. The Camo, with a slow sink rate, you don't want to sit here and count all day waiting for your fly to get down there. So basically, those are the 2 lines that I use. You can always use floaters, but I find that you have less options with a floating line as opposed to the line that sinks because of what we imitate. So that's basically what I use on lakes. And of course, there's a ghost tip line out there also made by Cortland that is fast becoming one of my favorites because it allows you to match the emerging insects that come up through the water probably better than the other line on the market. So the Camo and a Type 2 are my first choices. The clear floater and the Camo would be, or the ghost tip would be my other 2 that I would use on lakes for the most part. I think it's the biggest difference right now is it's going to allow us to make our presentations a little smoother on the water. If you find a flat condition like this right now, you're going to spook a lot of fish if you're false casting a colored line. The clear lines won't reflect any sun and allows you to get your fly out there without moving those fish. So that, plus the fact that they ride a little higher, I think will make a big difference for those of us who want to fish either dry on lakes or even on the emergence. The main thing is to get your fly in front of that fish without spooking him, and that's what that line's going to allow us to do. When the water gets real flat like this, that tends to put fish down a little bit deeper, so I just switched to a seal bugger, and I'm going to probe down on these deeper depths now and see if we can't get something that, because they'll tend to lay a little deeper when that bright sun with the flat water comes out. So I'm going to use this kind of pull just like this, see if we can get them to react to this, and there he is right there. So all you have to do is just start probing. If what you're using isn't working, you have to face these flat conditions like this. Sometimes it's easier to go down, and that's what I mean by not being afraid to experiment and try different flies. And the bugger is such a suggestive fly for me that you just have to try this different stuff. This water's a little darker, so I dropped that fly down a little bit deeper while we were talking, just to see if that would make a difference. And they're laying a little bit deeper. This is a nice cutthroat again, about 16, 17 inches. They're a little more lethargic. You see, he's not overly excited about the cold water, and showing him that net. It's a nice cutthroat though. Took that bugger really well. There's a nice cutthroat. That's a Yellowstone cutthroat. I'll put him right in there and let him. Ah, he's ready to go. For still waters, in fact, that thing's effective fly for just about anything. Steelhead guys do well with that particular fly. I went down deeper, and that's why I put on the blacker pattern so it'd show up a little bit better. Want to learn more about stillwater fly fishing? My first book, Flyfishing Stillwaters, is really a how-to and covered 30 years of fishing lakes, and I think that would be a tremendous aid for you if you're interested more on where the better lakes and the bigger fish are. The second book, which is Fly Fishing the West Trophy Lakes, will cover those points and how to fish each one of those lakes. And the last book that we just came out with is on stillwater patterns, not just the ones that I fish, but some of the best dries, nymphs, streamers. There's 15 of the best experts in the country, people that I'm confident in, and I respect their ability out on lakes, and they have their patterns, and all this is contained in there, not only how to fish them, but how to tie them. And so if you guys are interested in any of that, or even the videos where we show you the patterns and the techniques that we've talked about, you can contact me at area code 541-381-2218, or you can write us. We're at P.O. Box 470, Fort Klamath, Oregon, 97626. We'll be glad to send you a catalog. Contains all the products that I use on the water, and I think you'll find that everything in there will help you to be a better stillwater fly fisherman.